Hello everyone, welcome to the Selkares Wargaming channel for this new training on Wargame Island Battle. So, in this video I'm going to focus on the helicopters in Wargame. Helicopters are, in my opinion of course, a bit like the airplanes. They are units that aren't, you aren't obliged to take them in your deck. You can have a deck without helicopters and without planes that works correctly. But of course, just like planes, if you use helicopters and if you know how to use them, they can be very, very powerful. Helicopters, just like planes, are some of the units that can kill 2, 3, 4 times their price in points. And so it's really, really powerful once you know how to use them correctly. So globally, helicopters. So I'm going to start with the different weaponry because that's really what defines a helicopter, defines its role. There are basically 4 types of weapons on a helicopter. The basic weapon, which is either an MMG, a Gatling gun, or a autocannon, is the main weapon of a helicopter. Well, not the main weapon, but it's the weapon that you can find on most helicopters. The second type of weapons are the ATGMs, so just like the Hellfire over here. It's a ground anti-tank missile. An anti-tank missile. Very, very powerful, generally. Third type of weaponry is also an anti-ground weapon. It is the rocket pod, like the Hydra 70 just right here. And the last weapon is the anti-air missile. Of course, you've got some helicopters that are specialized in helicopter hunting. So that's it, 4 basic weaponries. Let's just discuss them a bit, and I'm going to explain to you what, in my opinion, are the major stats and the most important things you need to know about these weapons. So first, I'm going to say, first weapon of a helicopter, MMG, Gatling gun, or autocannon. These weapons generally have a mediocre range, going from 1000 to 1500 meters. It's not a big range. It is outranged by most of the anti-air units. It is outranged by the anti-air missiles from helicopters or planes. So it's basically a weapon you don't use that much. It is generally a weapon that is used in helicopter versus helicopter fight. 2 helicopters that don't have anti-air missiles will fight each other with these weapons, so it's still useful when, like, a Sea Cobra encounters a Me-24. The one with the best gun will win, of course, and with the best HPs, etc., but that's something else. So the main use of this weapon is anti-helicopter. It's a defensive anti-helicopter weapon, and an offensive anti-infantry and anti-light vehicles like transports or light vehicles with ATGMs or things like that. But it's a very situational weapon. You don't use it that much, and when you use it, it's because the enemy has an isolated unit or a helicopter coming in next to you. But that's basically it. There isn't, well, every weapon is very different. You've got some with AP power, some without, some with a huge rate of fire, so they stun quicker, some with a lower rate of fire, better suppression, but with a lower rate of fire they deal suppressive damage slower, but they have some AP power, so it's all up to you. Do you want some AP, do you want some HE, do you want some anti-infantry, some anti-vehicle, etc, etc. Some units are specialized in these types of weapons. You can take, for example, the French Gazelle cannon with only 1 autocannon, so it's basically anti-infantry and anti-infantry and anti-light vehicles, just like the Cassiope, which is just a heavier version of the helicopter with a better autocannon. Second type of weaponry is the rocket pod. Rocket pod is basically more or less the same for every helicopter. The accuracy, the HE power, the number of rockets change from helicopter to helicopter, of course. But the thing that you really the thing you need to know is that every single rocket pod has 2,100 meters in range, and that's quite a mediocre range. The anti-air units. There are basically 3 types of anti-airs. I'm putting the radar ones aside. There's the basic anti-helicopter unit, which is a basic AAA unit. It has very low range. It's really the crap anti-air. It's got somewhere between 1,000 and 1,700 meters range. So it will be outranged by a rocket, so you can stun and kill him with that. Okay. Then you've got the medium anti-air, going from 2,200 to 2,400 meters. So that's the most anti-helicopter units you'll see generally have those kind of ranges, be it AAA or missile, generally AAAs. And so these weapons outrange every single rocket pods on helicopters. So rocket pods need to be used very, very cautiously, as you'll be in anti-air range most of the time when you use these rockets. Use them only on isolated units or on units that attack you and aren't covered by anti-air yet. Okay. These rockets generally don't do that much damage, but they do a lot of suppressive damage. So these weapons are generally best used with a nice combination. You stun the enemy units with the rockets, and then a ground or another helicopter, or the same helicopter but with a different weapon, finishes off the enemy unit while it's stunned. That's basically how it works. Third type of weapon, the ATGM. ATGM also one of the important stats, apart from the usual accuracy, AP power, rate of fire, number of missiles. Normally you're used to that. Just like with every other weapon on helicopters, it's the range. It's always the same thing. A good range means you can survive. A bad range means if you are a bit too aggressive, you'll be into anti-air range and you'll get totally wrecked. So it's really important to have a nice range. So basically you can divide the ATGMs on helicopters sorry, into two categories. Those with 2,800 meters in range and those below. Why? Because as I told you, crap anti-air has up to 1,700 meters. Common anti-air has somewhere between 2,200 and 2,400, and elite anti-air has 2,800 meters, like the Roland. A couple of anti-airs are really special. Chaparral, Tunguska, they have more than 3,000 meters in range. None of your helicopters can outrange them, so everything's gonna get destroyed by those guys. So don't really bother, just avoid them. I'm going to just put those two aside and speak about all the others. So it's 2,800 meters max range against helicopters generally. So if you have an ATGM that is less than that, you'll generally be in range of the enemy elite anti-air. With a 2,800 meter, you'll just be like this one, the Hellfire. You'll just be at the limit, meaning you can destroy a tank that is advancing by a couple hundred meters without getting shot at by the anti-air, and you can even try your luck by attacking anti-air face on, and if you're lucky, your ATGM will hit the target and kill it before his missile hits you. So that's pretty nice. That's why this particular range is this 2,800 meters is pretty important. I said pretty much the same thing in the anti-air section. If you don't have 2,800 meter anti-air or better, well, every helicopter like this will just wreck every unit you have on your front line. That's pretty simple. So other than the range, of course, you've always got the same stuff. ATGMs are best used cautiously. You don't have much. It's 8 on the Apache, but most helicopters have, well, it's 8 here also, but most helicopters have 8 or 4. That's not much, as you may notice, and helicopters are quite hard to resupply. You need to pull them back, you need to land them, to bring in trucks, or to make them fly all the way back to the FOB, and generally it costs a lot of supply, so use them with caution. Do not send ATGMs against light transport like a Transport Ural or a BTR. It's totally useless. It's a waste of points, it's a waste of supplies, it's a waste of missiles, it's a waste of everything. Of course, the target you want to shoot at depends on the missile. Hellfire here has 26 AP, so it's targeted to the best tanks, T8 TBVs, T88, T8Us, T64 BVs, etc. Other ATGMs with less AP, like the TOWs with 16 APs, are best targeted to, let's say, medium tanks with something like armor between 10 and 13, 14, and that's pretty much it. So that's it. Rockets, missiles, ATGMs, 2,800 meters is really the good thing. The others, you have to be careful with them. Just don't send them in the fray too quickly. And the last weapons is the anti-air. So these helicopters, you've got anti-air helicopters, not much. On the packed side, you've got On the NATO side, sorry, you've got the French Celtic over here, which is one of the best in my opinion. You've got the OH-58CS, an American anti-air. Well, the Celtic is prototype. This one isn't. It's a bit less range and less AP, HE, sorry, than the Celtic. On the packed side, you've got, of course, the all the Polish troops, the Gniewos with the Strela 2M, the ME2URS with the Strela 3, and the Sokol with the Igla, but this one... Oh no, it's not a prototype. I thought it was. So that's pretty nice. You've also got the Aquila with its Igla. So as you've seen, all these anti-air helicopters have anti-helicopter missiles, so it's solely used for destroying helicopters. Against planes, the range doesn't seem that bad, but they generally take a lot of time shooting at planes, so I wouldn't recommend trying to use helicopters against planes. They generally suck, so use them against helicopters. In this case, the really important thing is the range and the rate of fire. Aquila, like, you've got 10 rounds per minute. If you take the Celtic has a 20 round per minute with the same range and a better accuracy, so you'll generally just kill the Aquila for twice less points, 2 times less points. So it's yeah, range and rate of fire are for me the most important stats. HE also is quite important, and accuracy of course, but that goes without saying. One helicopter is a bit different from the others. It's the Super Cobra here, because it's got plane anti-air missiles. As you can see here, the AIM-9M is an air-to-air missiles are used by planes. And so as you can see, they've got a nice range against planes. So this particular helicopter is pretty special. It can be used against other planes, and I believe it's the only one that can be used solely as a anti-plane unit. So just like to surprise your enemy, who generally wouldn't think a helicopter would shoot at his planes. That's pretty nice. The big thing about helicopters is, the stat that is common to every helicopter that you need to look at also is the strength. Helicopters generally go from 4, like the small transports or the French Gazelles. As you can see here, Gazelle Hot is 4, Celtic is 4, Gazelle Cannon is 4. So the crappiest helicopters are at 4 HP, and the biggest, like the Apache or the Havoc, are at 8. So that's the stat you really want to look at, because it varies a lot from one helicopter to the other. And 4 to 8, it's simple to double, and that also plays a big role on the HE power of weapons. A Celtic, for example, has 6 HE power, so apart from a few helicopters like the Apache or the Havoc here with 8 HPs, well, apart from those helicopters, you can one-shot pretty much everything. The American OH-58CS needs 2 shots to kill pretty much any helicopter apart from the basic transport. So 1 HE difference makes a lot of difference. So that's one stat you really need to look at. Size and speed vary a lot also from one helicopter to the other, but that's basically like every other unit, so you guys should know it by now. The real thing I would like to say to conclude this part of the video is that helicopters generally have limited ammo. Even some helicopters with rockets, you might think, oh my god, it's got 38 rockets, so it's got 38 plus 14, but generally these ammunitions, be it rocket pods, ATGMs, missiles, are shot very quickly, so you find yourself very often in a situation where your helicopter has fired all its ammo. So what I recommend is always be careful, always put your weapons off and put them on only when you see a decent target you want to shoot with your helicopter. That's pretty much what I recommend. Always keep your weapons off and micro your helicopters as much as possible. So speaking about micro, I'm gonna do a little, show you a little tips in a game. So that's, well, the few tips I know, I'm going to tell you. So I'm going to start with 2 helicopters here. 2 Cassiope, yeah, up. So let's go. So first, As you may already know, helicopters are by default on the ground unless you spawn them on a forest where they'll be hovering over the forest right at the start, of course. They've got 3 different positions on the ground. Change altitude makes them go at their default position, just hovering a couple of meters above the ground, and clicking once more will bring them to their high altitude, as you can see here. And they stop. Helicopters that hover like this do not use fuel, which is pretty nice, so they can hover like this pretty much for the entire game. That's pretty nice for recon helicopters that can see in the distance. If you click once more on change altitude, it will go back down, this one will go up, and then of course you can land it back to the initial position. One thing that people generally don't like, the complaint about helicopters, is that helicopters, well, take one like this, you send it over there and it will arrive, it will land, well, not land, but hover just here at low altitude. And for a recon chopper it's pretty bad because it will just have it will have his line of sight blocked by a forest or a small hill. You want it to be like this at all times. There's an easy way to do that, and I'm gonna show it to you. Basically, when you move a helicopter, its altitude at its point of arrival will be the same as its altitude at its starting position. Let's see, this one is going here, well, just here, this one is going here. This one was at low altitude, this one at high altitude. Let's see what will happen when they arrive. The first Cassiope is arriving at destination, is stopping, and will normally go back down right to the ground as it was at the starting position. And here we go, it's going down. This one, on the other hand, just has arrived and is staying above at its high altitude position. So that's something you need to know when you move helicopters around. There are 2 ways of moving helicopters. Either it's generally a recon chopper you want to see very, very far away, so you always want it to be above everything else, so you put it high altitude and you move it like that everywhere you want, so it will stay at high altitude. And then there are attack helicopters that you would prefer them to arrive and land behind a forest. In that case, just put them at low altitude and move them behind the forest to make sure once they arrive they don't stand stupidly hovering above the forest and being targeted by anti-air, that they land behind, well, not land, but go at low altitude behind the forest to stay in cover. That's basically how you have to move your helicopters. Speaking about cover, the changed altitude is also a very nice feature for protecting and attacking with your helicopters. Basically, imagine if you've got a defensive line over here in the forest, enemy is coming from over here. If there's no, well, yeah, it's coming over here. Well, just imagine there's no river and the enemy is coming over here. You've got defensive units, a few light vehicles. He's got light vehicles. There's a war going on, and suddenly you've got a heavy tank coming in, and you've got an ATGM helicopter over here. He's at low altitude over here. Just click change altitude. It'll go up, fire at the heavy tank, and once you've killed it, just click once more and go back down, hiding behind the forest. It's something that I don't use that much because it's quite micro-intensive with everything else going on in the game, but it will allow you to really use your helicopters at full effectiveness. It's really simple. Helicopters hiding behind a forest, a menace is coming in, just pop out, fire your rockets, fire your ATGMs, and go back down and stay protected by the forest and your defensive units in the forest. So that's pretty nice, and that's what I recommend you guys do when you use helicopters in a defensive position, of course. The other thing you need to know is the the hills. Double hills like these are pretty tricky, and I've encountered the situation before. If you've got an anti-air on the hill here and you've got a helicopter over, just moving over here, the anti-air will not shoot at the helicopter. It's I don't know if it's a bug or a elevation problem or anything else, but helicopters hovering over the ground zero, level 0 ground, and an anti-air on level 2 will never shoot at the helicopter at this level. The anti-air will have to move right into the forest over here to be able to shoot at your helicopters, but then it will be vulnerable to tanks in the open field over here. So that's pretty much a little tip to know about anti-air. If the enemy has positioned anti-air here, you can still go around the hill over here with your helicopters without being harmed by the anti-air. That's what I experienced in my games. Maybe it's not totally true, I don't know, I haven't retested it in depth, but that's what happened to me every single time, so that's basically what I think happens every time. That's it. So that's basically it. Use your helicopters cautiously when you use them. Don't spend all your missiles on crappy units. Keep your rockets and your ATGMs for valuable units. Don't send your helicopters blindly in the enemy positions. You'll just get slaughtered. Even the biggest helicopters, 8 HP isn't much. And then use the forests just like any other unit. Land behind them, pop out, fire, move from forest to forest, or for the recons, go at high altitude and move wherever you want to detect everything else. That's basically it. Just like with the planes, once again, be careful with the helicopters. Refrain from using them too much. Use them in the right situations and when you really know the enemy anti-air is so thin or inexistent, you will just slaughter his ground troops. That's basically it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you pretty soon for another video. Thanks.